Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to sharing some words of Torah with you this evening. In the small town of Dayton, Tennessee, in July of 1925, John Scopes was convicted and fined $100 for teaching evolution. Scopes was a 24-year-old high school teacher and football coach who had violated the newly passed Butler Act by teaching evolution in his classroom. The Butler Act was a Tennessee law prohibiting public school teachers from denying the biblical account of mankind's origins. In the end, Scope lost. The trial is often referred to as the monkey trial, based on a misunderstanding of Darwin himself, who did not suggest that humans evolved from monkeys, but rather that humans and monkeys have a common ancestor. They are part of the same evolutionary process. The state's attorney was William Jennings Bryan, a Christian, a pacifist, and a former candidate for the U.S. presidency. He agreed to take the case because he believed that evolution theory to be dangerous, and he believed the Bible should be interpreted literally. Scopes and the tenets of evolution were defended by the renowned criminal defense lawyer Clarence Darrow. And one of the things that I learned in reflecting upon the trial was it was so hot that they had to hold the trial outside. Didn't realize that. The trial became less about Scopes and more about the authority of the Bible versus the soundness of Darwin's theory. Millions of guesses strung together is how Bryan characterized evolutionary theory, adding that the theory made man indistinguishable among the mammals. Darrow, in his attacks, tried to poke holes in the Genesis story, calling them fool ideas that no intelligent Christian on earth believes. Now here is the challenge or the problem. It is 2021, nearly 100 years after the trial took place, and this issue has not been settled. In several conservative states, bills continue to be proposed yearly that would give teachers the right to teach what they believe. Thus, teachers would be able to promote a religious-based anti-evolution curriculum in the public school classroom. In 2015, the Pew Research Center study revealed that 34% of Americans still wholly reject the idea of evolution. About 60% of the surveyed teachers reported downplaying evolution, covering it incompletely, or ignoring it altogether. This battle against scientific knowledge and method alarms me. It alarms me as a serious Jew and as a liberally educated person. Thus, I have joined clergy people of various faiths in making this weekend the 15th annual Evolution Weekend. Evolution Weekend is an opportunity for serious discussion and reflection on the relationship between religion and science. About 17,000 clergy of all faiths across the country have signed on to this. 833 rabbis have signed this specific letter. As rabbis from various branches of Judaism, we, the undersigned, urge public school boards to affirm their commitment to the teaching of the science of evolution. Fundamentalists of various traditions who perceive the science of evolution to be in conflict with their personal religious beliefs are seeking to influence public school boards to authorize the teaching of creationism, a kind of reworked idea of biblical creation that is really religious and based, but they kind of smooth it over to pretend it isn't. We see this as a breach in the separation of church and state. To teach it in public schools would be to assert a particular religious perspective in an environment which is supposed to be free of such indoctrination. The Bible is a primary source of spiritual inspiration and of values for us and for many others, though not everyone in our society. It is, however, open to interpretation, with some taking the creation account and other content literally, and some preferring a figurative understanding. It is possible to be inspired by the religious teachings of the Bible while not taking a literalist approach and while accepting the validity of science, including the foundational concept of evolution. It is not the role of public schools to indoctrinate students with specific religious beliefs, but rather to educate them in the established principles of science and in other subjects of general knowledge. I am fearful that anti-scientism is encroaching in our open society, is undermining free inquiry, rational thought, and a general acceptance of the gift of science. And its result is devastating. For example, clergy who think that prayer will prevent their parishioners from COVID-19, or fundamentalists who reject the science of global climate change because God will ensure the survival of our planet. Therefore, whatever we do to the earth doesn't really matter. Darwin is not a threat to Judaism. In Judaism, there's no secular truth as opposed to religious truth. Galileo was persecuted, tortured, and arrested because of his teaching on astronomy. We don't have such persecution of science in Judaism. If science has something to teach us, religious authorities, the Talmud tells us, are to defer to that wisdom. Christian theologian and scientist Wolfhard Pannenberg writes, and I quote, "The theory of evolution has given theology an opportunity to see God's ongoing activity, not merely in the preservation of a fixed order, but in the constant bringing forth of things that are new." In other words, science helps us to understand the wonderfully creative and dynamic world that God initiated at the beginning of time. In the same way, from a Jewish point of view, science helps us to see the glory of the God in the world. It doesn't destroy it. This is what Rabbi Harold Schulweis said so beautifully. He said, Jewish minds never read the Bible as if they were a book of biology, or a book of archaeology, or a book of astronomy, or a book of history, or a book of logic. Torah is not science, it's not geology, and it's not history. Our Jewish sages never claim that the Bible is presented as empirical truth. Literalism reduces religion to silliness. To be literal is to be nonsensical. If you want to ridicule the Torah to make it a parody, just read it literally. The 7 days of creation is religious poetry, not a blueprint to creation. But here's what all thoughtful people should ask. But which is true? Science or faith? Genesis or Darwin? I gain great wisdom and meaning from the story of creation, what it teaches us, or teaches me about where human beings fit into the whole course of the world that we live in. But I've never thought the world was created in 7 days. That is just ridiculous. Science is concerned with facts. Torah is concerned with values. Science is concerned with what is. The Torah is concerned with what ought to be. Science explains the process, the mechanics of the world. But religion complements those affirmations. Yes, the world exists. But what is our purpose in it? Why are we here as human beings? The Torah says that we were created in the image of God, and thus we are called upon to bring creativity, compassion, love, sensitivity, goodness to this world. According to Judaism, we're God's partners in creation. With what we have been given by God, we're supposed to make something of it, to guard it, to create with it in the advancement of human civilization. We have been given a precious world of infinite potential, but we are called upon to make it into a work of art. Now, I wish that Evolution Weekend was unnecessary, that it would be something that really is irrelevant. But it isn't. Let's look at the world and see the people who want to deny something as fundamental as evolution. We Jews need to affirm what we believe and not be bullied into quiescence by simplistic religious fools. We cannot be party to a dangerous religious fundamentalism that undermines scientific wisdom. On this Shabbat, let us be thankful for both science and religion, well-researched scientific studies and words of Scripture. They both bring us closer to appreciating our extraordinary world. Let me end my comments this evening with the insight of Albert Einstein, who summarizes the coexistence of science and religion by writing that science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. Shabbat Shalom.